Hello, everyone. My name is Trish McCabe. Welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. Today, I have my awesome guest, Jaime Lang, joining me for the first time.
Hi.
Jamie is doing some wonderful work, and we'll talk about that at the closing of this podcast. Today, this topic that we're going to be discussing, based on some work that Jamie's been doing on the issue or topic of loneliness. And we're going to do two segments today. Our first segment will be loneliness and the internal aspect of loneliness. I'm going to take your notes, Jamie, and just use those as, the starting points to talk about this topic and just dig in.
Okay.
First of all, I think it'd be good for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, for people to know who you are.
Okay. Well, my name is Jamie. I'm a life coach. I got interested in doing this work a lot because of my experiences with mental health related problems that I've had since I was a kid. At first, I was interested in going into therapy because that was the treatment I was receiving. But I found that for my own healing, I actually did better when I incorporated other modalities like spirituality and like understanding different root causes for how I look at things like fears and my perspective of the world. And so life coaching kind of allows me to take some of the background I have, having been introduced to psychology as both a client and a student, and also incorporate other modalities so that we can help bring healing and wholeness through integration and understanding yourself, and then moving forward with the life that you want to create. It's essentially my goal.
I love it. Yay. Bless you for the work that you're doing. I'm so excited. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So on your notes here, you put the internal work, and that's your relationship with yourself, which I love. And then in parentheses, you said, my personal theory is that with most growth topics, it helps to start within and then grow outward. Seed analogy. I love that.
Yeah, I feel like I go to like trees and seeds a lot to use analogies for, especially for growing, because like with the seed, you've got the potential to become whatever plant it's going to become, but it changes form many times, and yet the essence is still the same. And I feel like there's some misconceptions with growth, that sometimes you become someone completely different, and that's not really the goal. The goal is to become more of who you actually are. But a lot of the work actually starts underground when you're first doing the initial stages of growing. It's not that you're out there and everyone's noticing all these big changes. It's inside with the thoughts and the understanding and the sitting with yourself. And so most of the things that we're looking to change within our external world start with understanding what's going on within us and making those changes there, so that we can kind of bolster ourselves up and break through the soil, so to speak. And I think that loneliness is a big topic that goes into both the external and the internal, because the ultimate goal is to have people around that understand you and see you and that you can connect with. But before we even get to that part, we have to really learn how to understand, see, and connect with ourselves. And so I think that's the topic that we're going over in general.
Yes. Where the loneliness comes from and the cause of it. If you don't know that, I mean, it's like my dad used to say, you can't get the answers if you don't even know what the questions are. And so we're getting to the deeper stuff, the questions. So I love the first one that you have here. It's fabulous. Self-judgments, the shoulds and shouldn'ts. And I'll just read this first little part, and then we can dig in from there. Judgments limit our perspectives by cutting things in half. You make a distinction between good, bad, and then because we naturally want to be good, whatever we define that as. Usually it will be something we have picked up from our environment. I love that. And then you say, we will push the bad away. If we do this enough, which most of us do, it becomes hard to see or recognize whatever is defined as bad within us. And if we do look at it, it is through a lens of condemnation rather than understanding. So I'd love for you to expound on that because I just love that. I think that is so spot on.
Yeah, so I feel like judgments, like in order to gain understanding with yourself and with others, you really need to look at judgment. And judgment is a tool that we use a lot to keep ourselves safe, to kind of discern what's good for us and what's bad. And so, like, it's not a bad thing. But what happens is that we'll start seeing things in very strict, this is good and this is bad, and this is always good and this is always bad. And that narrows the gap for being able to understand whatever we consider bad, especially when we're looking within ourselves. Because to be a human being, there's this desire to be good on some level. We might twist the definition of good to fit us if we can't live up to it, but it creates a huge amount of psychological pain to feel like you're bad. So even if someone does something that they know they shouldn't do or that is painful, they're going to justify it. And that's part of making yourself feel like you're good again, or like you have a reason. So if we've gotten a strong enough viewpoint of this is bad and this is good, but there's actually a part of us that falls into what we would consider the bad category, it's going to be extremely painful for us to look at that and really understand it. Our desire is going to be like, that's not part of me. I want nothing to do with it. And even if I do see it, I'm going to like try and beat it out of me, basically. Like, we get a lot of that negative self-talk. How can I be so stupid, lazy, mean, whatever it is that we've decided is that really bad thing that we can't handle.
And this is what I always wonder when therapists, and I would see it online or my own therapist talk about internal conflict. This is at the heart of internal conflict. When you do have a part of yourself that exists and you're deeming it bad and wrong, but it's there. So you're conflicted. It creates this, but you keep thinking and or feeling it, and you're conflicted because you're like, no, that's bad and wrong. But it wants to be heard. So it could, because it's a part of you. And then you're having that internal struggle.
You're trying to get rid of something that's you because you don't think that you're good enough for you. And so in order to do that, like, you've divided yourself and you've pushed this other part so far away that now it's super painful, because basically what you're grappling with is, how can I be someone I'm not?
Can I chime in for a second?
Yeah.
I read a wonderful book, which I highly recommend, and I've said this in podcasts before. It's called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford, that addresses this head on. That her example was one I could identify with, and maybe you might. And I won't get too long into this, just real quick. You know, she starts out her book saying that she never wanted to be a bitch because her mom was a bitch or angry, or, you know, outwardly angry and verbally abrasive and things like that. So she had this judgment about being a bitch because of that. My mom was a bitch. I never want to be that. But there are times when you need to be a bitch.
Yeah.
There's a gift in the bitch that we get robbed of by condemning it bad and wrong based on a negative experience, the negative side of that trait, bitch, if that makes any sense. Does this apply?
Yeah, I mean, essentially that's like what we're talking about, is when you use judgment and calling something bad, you can't even look at it to see that there's a reason that it exists. There's a reason that that part of you is part of you, and it does have something beautiful that it can bring and contribute. But even if you couldn't find that positive thing, whatever it was, the loneliness is partially created because you're not even seeing or accepting that part of yourself. So there's no way you're letting anyone else in. And there you've already got a wall up that's going to make it harder to connect and find that safe spot that you want, where someone can see all of you, because you're not doing it either.
And you're like, I'm unlovable.
Exactly. And
I have issues. I'm toxic and I can't fix it. I'm broken. I see this a lot. It's terrible. Don't ever call yourself broken, people. You're dealing with things, and it's okay to deal with these things. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, which is where the condemnation comes in, and making it bad and wrong.
And I mean, like, I think you could use the term broken if you can do it in a way that's not condemning to yourself. Like, I know there's that beautiful analogy of the Japanese pottery where the pottery gets broken and then it gets fixed with gold, so that over time you have this beautiful gold veined piece. that's created through the brokenness, but only if you can really accept brokenness as not a harmful term to yourself. If you're using it in a derogatory way, then it's probably better not to put that on yourself.
To put that on yourself. But I see people do it, and I see them say it, and I've experienced it, and I've even said it myself, which can be denigrating. You could be denigrating yourself, and that creates loneliness.
Yeah,
feelings of loneliness.
Anytime you're putting yourself into a position where you can't even understand, it's not that you have to agree with every single thing that you do, or that like you want to stay in a state of feeling or a place that's clearly causing harm to you or those around you. But before you can address like the harm that it's causing, you have to be able to see it. In order to see it, you really have to lay down the judgment. If you have the judgment up, it kind of creates a blind spot for you, or a shield, because you're looking at it through a lens of, I don't like this, I don't want this, how can I get rid of it? And you're not being receptive to what it has to offer you and what it's actually telling you about where you are and what you need.
On this, what I realized I was doing, it's so funny when you're caring about other people, you can have compassion over their mistakes, but not of your own.
Yeah.
You could be so loving and kind and caring. Don't beat yourself up, but yet.
Yeah, no, I definitely run into that. And like the way that I had to face it was I had to be like, it kind of sounds harsh, but it like made me look at what I was doing. And I was like, look, when I do that, I'm setting myself up. Do I think that I'm better than these other people, that I have to live up to this higher standard? If I can accept them and love them for who they are, and I see myself as equal, if I want to understand what equality means in terms of worth and understanding, then I don't give myself a higher standard because somehow I think I can rise to it when they can't.
Yeah. Right.
And then that's like, and I was like, oh, okay, let me learn how to really understand what it means to, to quote the Bible, love my neighbor as myself, or to take on another, and understand that we're reflections of each other and what that love is on both sides. Because when I'm separating myself from that, also that's creating loneliness, because now you're putting yourself on a different playing field, whether you put yourself higher or lower. You're separating. Not connecting. Mm-hmm. Again, you've moved yourself away. And that can create that.
That could create that. Yeah. There was something that I had a question, darn it. Because I get so excited about this stuff, my mind gets going. Oh, the distinction between judgment and discernment. Mm-hmm. I want to address that real quick before we move forward, because it can become I like to say judgmentalness rather than judgment. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually did a video, I think, on this topic before too, because it was something that it can become a loop where you're like, oh, I'm being judgmental, I can't be judgmental at all. And then you let all this stuff into your life that's actually painful for you. So the way that I would understand the difference is discernment is understanding like deeply where you are and what's around you, and figuring out what works best, what's most compatible with you to have in your environment that's supportive and that you can also support. But judgment has that kind of condemnation, punitive system of, this is always bad, this is always wrong. And not only is it wrong for me, it's just wrong in general. So I can't accept it. When you've got discernment, you can say, this doesn't work for me, so I'm going to put it over there, but I'm not going to condemn it to like some horrible like thing that it's got like that like punishing, shaming quality to it. It's just like choosing a favorite color. I like this color, I don't like this color as much. It doesn't make it bad, it's just there. That's how I see it. And
also the power of contrast. Mm-hmm. These things that come up that we've been told are bad and wrong have a purpose. Yeah. And you may not understand them right away once they're revealed to you through your inner work. But just put them aside, like you said, but also at some point their purpose will come for you, because it's like bad and wrong, right? How would you know what good is without bad? How would you know what bad is without good? You need that contrast. It's necessary in the process of discernment even.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, so when we're talking about loneliness or dealing with self-judgment or anything like that, we start like, I start the process with lowering the judgment so that you can see it. Once you can see it, then you can use discernment to say, what aspect of this do I need to understand and take care of and feed, so that it can develop the strength part rather than the part that's creating all this havoc? Because usually there are aspects of it that like whatever we think is bad or wrong, there's a reason. And when you look at the reason and you see it, then you can actually gain an understanding of how to resolve that and create a kind of peace and harmony with that part. It's not that that part is inherently bad or wrong, but the reaction of whatever is going on. So like, I don't know, let me think. I think the example I used on there was stealing, right, on my notes.
Yes,
So
I was just going to
someone,
mention that.
yeah, you know, you could say stealing is always bad and wrong, and oh my gosh, you're a thief, I hate you. But do you understand the need that comes from, you know, you're starving to death, or you're watching your family suffer for lack of material things, and you feel like you have no other way to access it.
My
Or
mom did that when they were growing up in extreme poverty in, you know, West Virginia in the winter. They took sometimes that's what they had to do to survive. They hated it. It wasn't something they enjoyed, but I wouldn't be here today.
yeah, I mean, like Robin Hood, that's a story that's kind of that
Yeah.
essence. So you lower the judgment first, so that you can see like what's underneath it and like, why is this happening? And then you can say, yeah, you know, ideally you don't want to create situations where people feel like the only way they can survive is to steal. You want to have them have access to the resources they need and feel empowered to go and, you know, find other ways to get this. But if you start off with the judgment of stealing is always bad, or you're a thief, I can't even stand you, you're never going to get to see what's underneath that. Why is this happening? And so when we're dealing with loneliness and with a lot of growth work in general, you start with lowering the judgment so that you can see what's going on. And then you can build up from there. And then you use the discernment to say, okay, what's actually going on? What do we actually want to create? Because someone who's stealing, it's not like they're going out there with an intention to be a bad person or take.
Always.
I
Not
can't
always.
get what I, yeah, not always. It's like, it's more of, I don't feel like there's any other way for me to get what I need, or I feel like this is justified somehow because of the circumstances. There's deeper issues that you don't get to see when you put up that wall.
And the great thing about it is when you incorporate that into yourself and accept it as a part of yourself, it's so freeing.
Mm-hmm.
You're befriending it. Yeah. And then when you see people that do it, you have a different, you don't feel as lonely because you can see yourself in them and why they do what they do. It helps you to see the humanness and that common ground that you have with others.
And then you develop compassion and connection because you can say like, oh, I see this part of you that's in pain and that's acting on this pain. And I understand it because I've seen that part in myself. And from this level, I can relate to you as a human that's going through this thing. And if you found a resolution, then you can even share it. But, you know, like at the very least, you can share this like, oh yeah, this is a hard situation. This is a difficult position to be in. And I see that and I feel it. And now we're on the same page together. And already you've taken a huge step away from feeling lonely and isolated.
And you don't have as much shame in being real, being honest, even with yourself. It doesn't have, like what Jeff Brown says, this bushel of shame that you have to hide it under. You know, you can embrace it and coming with that understanding, discernment, and then self-compassion. It's a game changer. It's a really big shift.
It is. It makes a huge difference in how you relate to yourself and the world, and how much energy goes into hiding things that you don't have to hide. You can just understand and address or strengthen, or, you know, like it makes a big difference in how you look at things.
And then the great thing is, which is, I think is so wonderful, is it becomes a place of empowerment, because now being a bitch serves you at the time when it's necessary. It's not always necessary, but sometimes that behavior, what we've called a bitch, and that blanket statement that's glossed over being a bitch is always bad and wrong, is actually not true.
Yeah.
You know,
sometimes
if someone accosts you and you react, someone say she's being a bitch. Well, you know, someone is attacking you, you might have to adhere to raising your voice. The behavior is the same, but it's not for the same reason. So you can see in the discernment process that truth, and then suddenly it becomes a tool in your belt. And a part of you that you were like, wow, I used to think this was so bad and wrong, and now I'm not afraid of it, and I'm not hiding and avoiding anybody else that adheres to that behavior. You can understand it and see it more clearly.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point about taking these types of behaviors or beliefs and and using the strength in them. It's kind of like having a knife, right? The knife can be used to cook a meal, or it can be used to cause harm. But you don't just like say, oh, I'm never going to use this because it could cause harm. You learn how to use it correctly. And then all of a sudden it's a great tool where you can feed yourself and other people. But
you could do harm, but you can also do good,
you
like
can
money.
choose to, but like when you learn how to do it, then you can choose not to.
Like you see people, money is the root of all evil. No, that's not true. Money is not the root of all evil. Many people do amazing things with their money.
Mm-hmm.
They do nothing but help people, and some not so much. But the money has gotten a bad rap and kept people from having more abundance, through their judgments about money.
That's
the
true.
Bad traits of money and what bad things that people do with money. But once you remove that lie, suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I can have more money and I'm not a bad person, or not to get off topic. Sorry.
But then you can choose more authentically and consciously what you're going to do with that trait instead of just calling it bad and pushing it away.
I love this. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm like an excited little kid because, man, I mean, I know I like you, and so many wish I didn't known this so many years ago.
Yeah.
My decisions would have been so different. We'd have been able to honor ourselves and others.
Yeah. It's an understanding, like some things that we just take for granted. Sometimes just that change in perspective or mindset, it opens up this whole gateway to how you relate to the world, how you relate to yourself, what you allow in. And it makes such a huge difference. And sometimes you're just like, oh man, I wish I knew that, 10, 20 years ago, but I'm glad I know it now. So,
and hence doing this work that we're doing to help people, because we do know what it's like.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. So that's the wonderful, amazing thing about it. Anyways, I get so giddy like a little kid here. I'm just looking at some of your notes here. You're talking, okay, what made you feel so powerless? How did you think this would benefit us? Okay, when you're talking about the stealing.
Oh yeah, so like those are just like things about how once you lower the judgment, and instead of saying this is bad no matter what, you can ask questions about the situation and get honest answers. Like they're not mocking judgmental questions, but they're open. Like, I really want to understand the situation. What really caused this to happen? What were you really responding to? Because that actually tells you a lot about, again, where you are, what your situation is, what you need, and how to address things in a different way. But if you start off with the condemnation, you don't ask those questions, or at least you don't listen to the answers up in general. I mean, but you don't always have the openness to hear the answers, because it can be too easy to say, this is bad, I don't want to hear it. There's no excuse, instead of listening to what the actual reason is. So
and having the courage to ask the question. Like one of the things that, I was working with this doula woman who was wonderful. She helped me get to my truth. And she would say, what are you feeling this? And I would say, I'm feeling depressed. Well, what is your depression trying to tell you? Mm-hmm. And then she's like, don't edit the answer. Whatever comes up, that's the answer. Don't judge it. Don't criticize it. Just honor it. And I love that. That was the beginning of doing this internal work that you're talking about, looking inward and asking the questions, and then just letting whatever the answer is be whatever it is. That's the other part about the condemnation. Don't condemn it, just discern it. And even just if you don't know what to do with it right away, just sit with it. The answers will come just in asking the question, I've found.
Yeah. It's just, it's allowing, like you said, the answer to him. You don't necessarily have to do anything with it, but seeing it makes a huge difference. And again, that's the thing, like the thing that makes it scary to look at the answers is that we have this habit of judgment, which creates pain. So now every time you think of it, you think of pain. But if you can reduce the judgment, there's less of the pain that comes up, because then you can just look at it and see what it is. And that's why that helps with that process of like, just let it come up and be what it is. Again, don't condemn it, don't judge it, don't make it bad, because that's creating the pain that's making it hard to actually see
what it is and why
like
it keeps coming up.
Yeah, it's
because it wants to be heard. Yes,
it does. It's telling you something, and it's telling you something important,
and it's your spirit and your soul. Yes. Yeah, I love that. I just, God, that's so great. The big one here, which is a big one, is the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, what ties in directly with what you're saying. Shoulds and shouldn'ts are very damaging. What do you think about that? The shoulds and the shouldn'ts.
Well, I think the shoulds and shouldn'ts are like micro judgments, if you want to think of it that way. They're like the little navigational system we use to try and make ourselves good instead of bad. But again, they're ways of saying, I want to live up to this standard, so I can't accept this part of me, so I should, and it's like that guidance system, but it's based on that judgment of what we've deemed good and bad and how we need to be instead of how we actually are and how we should respond, because that's where that judgment part comes in.
Yes.
So that's why I listed under there. It's because we're not going to go around like thinking like, oh, I'm judging this. What we're going to say is, I should do this. That person should do that. Things should be this way. And that's going to tell you a lot about what the values are. Like even that, like not judging that as a judgment, but listening to it as, okay, these are my values. But by doing this, am I cutting myself off from seeing the opposite side of what would happen if I didn't do this? What would happen if it wasn't this way? What would happen if and it's not that you actually have to act on it, but it allows you to see the other side that gets closed off when you're like, it should be this way.
So change it from should to shouldn't to, why am I feeling this? What is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to show me about myself?
Yeah. What am I trying to gain from this? What do I want from the situation? What's so important to me? What am I valuing? Depending on the situation, there might be slightly different questions, but
right.
It's part of how you're navigating your life, your decisions.
I think this is the should and shouldn't is a huge form of gaslighting yourself.
Mm.
And so then you don't trust yourself. And I think, and I want to do some work on this. I think that creates a lot of, I don't know, it'll come to me, but we're on the right track with talking about the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, because, you can't be guided by yourself until if you're telling yourself you shouldn't be where you're at or shouldn't be feeling what you're feeling, you never get to the reason why. And not only that, you don't trust your own spirit, right? You end up sabotaging yourself inadvertently, because, and the thing is, if you can't trust yourself, you're going to have a hard time trusting other people. That's why it's so important to remove the shoulds and the shouldn'ts. Oh shoot, it's telling me this meeting will end in 10 minutes. So we have 10 minutes. Perfect. Okay. So anyways, but the should and the shouldn't thing is such a powerful aspect to what we're talking about. If you're feeling something, you have a judgment about it, you're going to be stymied.
Yeah. Right? Especially like if you take it to the point of, I shouldn't feel this, instead of, I do feel this. What's the reason? Yes. And I think that's where you get, again, between discernment and like, discerning is recognizing that you feel it, and then you can ask, okay, what is this? Why is it here? Whereas the shouldn't goes into the judgment form of, I shouldn't feel this. And so instead of going any further, that's it. I shouldn't feel this. I'm going to try and feel some way else, without taking the time to understand why you are feeling that.
Yes. And just the shoulds and shouldn'ts definitely are an element in self-trust and trust in yourself to navigate your life. And if you are feeling it, it wants to be heard. It's coming up for a reason. Yeah. And the judgments, even like people say, oh, I'm depressed and I'm so bad and wrong. Huh? There's many valid reasons for being depressed, folks.
Yeah.
Many valid reasons. And that's a huge umbrella to work with, but it's a common one I see a lot. Yeah. Beating yourself up for being depressed. You should be happy, and all those attachments to happiness and all that.
And as long as you do that, you're not going to see the reality of the fact that you're not. And then you're not going to be able to see, well, maybe there's a reason why. And that was like one of the things when I had to rebuild a lot of self-trust myself, because, just from experience, this is something that I did a lot. But one of those things that I had to learn how to do, sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. It
I
completely
know.
went there.
I do that all the
I
time.
hate when that happens. I
There's
was
so
like,
many
I had
variables.
it and it just completely like left my head. What was it?
I was talking about
Self-trust.
depression and telling yourself not to be depressed, which is just,
Yeah.
how are you going
Oh,
to
I
know
know.
why
I
you're
remember what it was.
depressed? Okay.
Yeah, no, but it was like there are sometimes when you feel things and you don't know what the reason is, and it's okay to not know the reason. I'm like, people for the most part, you're going to feel something, maybe you're going to do something. There might be a reason or many reasons, but you don't always know. And sometimes it's okay to even not know. And you can just say, if I'm reacting to this, there's a reason for it. And if I'm not ready to know what it is right now, or I don't know what it is right now, I can admit that too.
And it could be a warning or a signal that something
Mhm.
needs to be addressed. You
Yeah.
may not know always what it is, but so you can take it as a cue to be aware
Yeah, instead of
of when
condemning
it
yourself
comes
for
up.
saying, I have no reason for being this way, so I shouldn't be this way. Like, well, I'm feeling this way, so there's probably a reason. I don't know what it is yet, but maybe I can start looking into different possibilities and I'll figure out something
And I
that
want to
will.
tie this in real quick is this comes from, and I'm seeing it more and more, being raised, being told, you better stop crying or I'll give you a reason to cry.
Oh yeah.
So you're taught that crying is bad
Hmm.
from a very young age. And there's a lot of that going on in society. I'm not, and again, this is not judgmental, it's discernment. This is looking at it from a compassionate heart to understand where this stuff comes from. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, so I love this, and I see there are more notes. And if you want to break this up, because I love it, the more the better. The way I look at it, if you want to break this up as well, to make it, two segments of the internal work and then two segments of the external, I would love that. Whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, we could do that if that works better. So I don't want to rush anything or force it. So this one's kind of mostly just dealing with the judgment aspect, which again, I think it's important part to address because that is the starting point. It's really hard to see the whole picture if you're pushing half of it away.
Yes. So this will be, segment one
Okay.
of the internal work. And then next time we'll do segment two and move on to external. This is where the meat and potatoes is with ourselves, our inner selves, our inner world, and how to, because so many people say meditate, but okay, that's good. I'm not saying that's not good, but like sometimes if you don't know how to navigate meditation, it's going to be hard to get anything out of it. And I think this is really helpful anyways. But so on a closing note, because then we'll pick up on the next one with understanding the self. We'll pick up on that. Or really, if you want to pick up where we left off and go, that'll be your decision where you want to pick back up, basically. But so I'll rephrase that. We'll pick back up where you decide, and you will let me know. So before we close here, I would like everyone to hear about the work that you're doing a little bit more in detail. You have this communication thing come out, which I posted on my page. I would like to just hear about anything you want to share, that and whatever else before we close out here.
Okay, well, the communication thing is just this webinar. I had an idea from it last week because I've getting a lot of questions about relationships, and I think that communication is a super important part of forming healthy relationships because it's obviously how we connect with and understand each other. And there are a lot of things that we kind of take for granted in communication that I feel would be helpful to express better, especially in terms of listening and taking in information and learning how to understand the entire person. So it was just something that I was playing around with the idea of putting together if I got enough interest. And it seems like it's getting some interest. So it will probably come out next month. So I have time to put it with like nice slides and make it live and open for discussion. But it's going to talk about like the different parts of communication and different styles of communication. And the idea that basically every time you're talking to someone, you are having your own language that happens between you and the other person and you and the other group. It's not like there's this one solid objective way to communicate with everyone. You're constantly relating to each other and developing that type of rapport between each other and understanding. So when people go from one person to another and they expect that everyone just understands automatically what they mean without taking the time to make sure that they're on the same page, you get so much miscommunication. And
yes,
it can
lack of
kind of
clarity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
I
just
love
misunderstanding
that.
each other.
I'm so excited about this. So folks, I'm going to put a link for her page, so you can follow her and find out your life coaching. Is it life coaching?
Yeah,
Is that what
life
it's
coaching.
life
Yes.
coaching that she's going to be doing, and how she's gonna, grow and move forward from there. I'm very excited to do the next podcast. And I'm just so looking forward to this and very thankful that we have connected and we're able to just have this conversation. Isn't it wonderful?
It is.
It's a
It's
blessing.
amazing. Thank you.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Jamie, for joining me today. Folks, stay tuned. There's more to come. And yeah, hope you all have a wonderful day. And until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.